Hi guys, today's video is about Dorian Yates, the Shadow. Now Dorian had a remarkable bodybuilding career. It was well documented at the time that he was sentenced to 6 months in a youth detention facility as a teenager, and that's when he started weight training in 1983. Now just after 2 years of training, he was selected to compete as a heavyweight at the World Championships in 1985. Where he placed a very respectable 7th in a very strong field. Now that field was led by Demey and Mendenhal, and if you've got a bit of age behind you like I do, you know those guys were no slouches. The following year, Yates won the heavyweight division at the British Championships. 2 years later, in 1988, he returned to win both the heavyweight and overall. Now, Yates debuted as a pro at the 1990 night of the championships, now the New York Pro, where he finished second to Momo Benaziza. Rest in peace, Momo. The opinion at the time was that Momo had beaten Yates from the back. Probably the worst thing ever for everyone else that actually occurred, because obviously Yates took that criticism on board and took the rest of the year off, came back at the 1991 night of the championships with a much improved back and won the show. Now Yates continued on that year to his first Mr. Olympia, where he pushed Mr. Lee Haney with a strong second place. Now as far as legs and condition goes, I probably would have given the nod to Yates, but you've got to knock out the champ to beat the champ, and Yates wasn't quite there yet. And look, and he's barely known, as he hadn't competed as a professional very much, so he had to probably pay his dues. Haney retired following the 1991 Mr. O, and in 1992, Yates won from a very impressive newcomer by the name of Kevin Levrone. Now maybe Yates thought his win over Levrone in 1992 was too close, as about 8 weeks prior to the 1993 Olympia, some black and white pictures came to light that blew everyone away. Yates had put on seemingly a remarkable amount of size from the previous year and seemed very close to being contest ready. This is the pre-photo shopping and all this sort of thing, so you knew these photos were genuine. And the word at the time was these photos rattled the confidence of many of the pros. He was a clear winner that year in what I believe he considers his best ever condition. In second was Flex Wheeler, and he was hot off some wins that year, so but he still won comfortably. Now Dorian Yates waved in a new era of bodybuilding. Well, I personally preferred the more aesthetic appeal of Haney's physique. There was no question that Yates' lower body was far superior, more developed, and his conditioning was at a different level. The softer glutes and hammies that were the thing of the 90s became a thing of the past, and to me, Yates' 1993 win started the trend for the mass monsters. Many bodybuilders were forced to adapt and come in a lot bigger, or they had to leave the competition. Despite not having the prettiest physique, there were very few weak points on the 1993 Yates. His legs from the side and rear were fully developed and diced from calves right up to his glutes. He lacked some outer thigh sweep for me, but the separation between muscles was good. He didn't have the wasp waist of someone like Haney, but his abdominal muscles were really well detailed. His biceps were probably his weakest body part, as they didn't have a really good peak, and they weren't really that large, but his triceps were just super impressive. And to this day, I consider his side tricep pose to be one of the best ever to grace the Olympia stage. Just the detail there, and the horseshoe is just fantastic. His chest was well developed and defined, but probably lacked some fullness in side poses. But his back was where he was really unbeatable. He had great width, detail and enormous thickness in both front and rear poses. Now I saw this guy guest pose not long after his 1992 win, and to be honest, pictures and videos really don't impress the thickness of his lats and just his overall muscle density. Now I'm usually a fairly reserved guy and pretty quiet, but I was so overwhelmed by his size that I was literally hooting, hollering at the top of my voice as he was hitting his signature and poses. Friends couldn't really believe it, but it was just so fantastic. Now isolating his back just by itself, I'm not taking into consideration his tie-ins with his arms and his shoulders or anything, just his back, I consider Yates had the best overall back the game has ever seen. Now I suppose there could be some arguments on that one, but look, that's my opinion. Now, Yates was known for his high intensity training, focusing on a minimum of sets, working well beyond failure. Now this training obviously did really good for him in terms of building muscle, but it wasn't kind to his body as he started to accumulate a number of significant injuries. His bicep tear was the most obvious, and this created contention among the pros. And Sean Ray, if I recall correctly, was prominent in those discussions, stating that Yates shouldn't continue to win the Mr. Olympia with one underdeveloped arm. Now, though I was a great supporter of Yates, some of his poses were definitely compromised, and I do concede one or two of his wins were debatable for me. Now, Yates suffered a tricep tear prior to the 1997 Mr. O, but continued to the competition and won. Now, going from my memory again, he didn't immediately retire following that competition, but later decided that the recuperation required for his tricep injury would impact his 1998 Mr. Olympia training, so he called it a day. In his 15 wins, he accumulated 6 Sandos, so really impressive guy. As mentioned earlier, Yates earned his nickname the Shadow for his habit of seemingly disappearing between competitions to train and improve and come back out of nowhere to compete. Now, unlike a lot of bodybuilders at the time and even now, Yates avoided the limelight and maintained a really low profile during his Olympia reign. He didn't relocate to the US, preferring to train off-season at Temple Gym in the UK. And I think this, in addition to Yates' underdog story coming from being a troubled teen to the best bodybuilder in the world, all added to his aura and earned him the huge popularity and respect he has and had as one of the greats. Anyway, that's my little take on Dorian Yates. Any comments, let me know. Cheers. Bye.